All right, we're live. So, up there he is. I'm going to call the regular board meeting of the Indian Wells Valley Water District to order at 4:30. So with that, I will ask if Ms. Mallory, could you do the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Hand over your heart. That's your right hand on your left side. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
President Kaczynski,
I'm sorry, did you call my name?
President Kaczynski,
I'm here. I didn't hear
Vice
that.
President St. Amand,
Present.
Director Boyd,
Here.
Director Griffin,
Here.
Director Ratora.
Here. Okay, posting of agenda and declaration.
The agenda for today's regular board meeting was posted on Thursday, May 9th, 2024.
5-9. All right, conflict of interest declarations.
President Kaczynski,
None.
Vice President St. Amand,
None, but that being said, I must inform you that I'm an employee of the federal government. However, any opinion I might express tonight does not necessarily reflect that of my employer or the other board of directors. Thank you.
Director Boyd,
None.
Director Griffin,
None.
Director Ratora.
None. Thank you. Are there any questions from the public or comments on closed session? I don't see anybody online or here. So I believe we can move on past that and move into closed session at 4:32.
Yeah, it is. It's a package.
we're doing, or tell us, no, you're doing it wrong, do it this way.
Okay,
I think, I think it's probably a good thing. I think they do an extensive audit, which I think is important.
Yeah.
And if you read through our audits, it's not just a two-page deal.
Right.
It's a great audit. And we've maintained our credit rating through them, showing that we have financial responsibility. So I think it's a good thing. And I'll make a motion to approve.
well, thank you for that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, since there's no more comments, I'll just call for the vote.
Ron? Oh, there's a delay.
David, oh, there it goes. It showed up. It
No,
just,
no, I-
it just, yeah.
I hit all the buttons, I promise.
It has, yeah. Push it 5 or 6 times. Looks like the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Any discussions or anything you want to bring up there, Chuck?
No, just a real quick recap from last month. We do have a meeting this Wednesday. And everybody, please take note. The agenda came out today. The closed session will be after open session. So the meeting is starting at 10 o'clock
Okay,
for open session. So just public notice that it does start at 10. There's a few things on the agenda that they're going to be discussed. I noticed they put a Little Lake discussion. And
Right.
also, the adjudication, it looks like they're going to discuss and impacts to small pumpers. And I just want to reiterate that the district stance is always and will continue to be that we are here to protect them and we will protect them through this adjudication. So I want to get that point across. At last month's meeting, it was relatively a quick meeting. They received and filed the financial audit
for what year?
for 2022. So it was not as detailed as our audit. So that was my point, that I think we have a great audit company. So thank you for that. And then also they approved a master agreement with the Bureau of Land Management. And it was, I voted no on this. It was for the extended pipeline in the future years through AVEC. If needed, having to build a larger pipeline from Cal City to Mojave to
Right.
extend for volume. I did not support that, so I was the only no vote, but that did pass. And then we had a great presentation. Renee actually did a very good job on her presentation. And it was a shared presentation with Stetson on consolidation of small pumpers and, small districts and stuff like that. So it was a great presentation. There was some questions brought up. In the presentation from Stetson, it listed that areas like Rademacher and stuff like that. And then they also, they brought up a map that showed the area to the east, kind of southeast. It would be like from, I think it showed Brady to Jack's Ranch Road. It was a bunch of individual houses out there and they were talking about consolidating
Right.
them. And I asked the question, I said, well, those are all people on individual wells and I could not see them wanting to consolidate if they're on an individual well. And so I said, I voiced a little bit of concern about that because those people are on a well and I think they're going to stay on their wells, but
Yeah, as a resident of the area between Brady and Jack's Ranch Road, I can say not only no, but hell no.
Well, has the GA spent any time at all looking at who wants to consolidate?
I think that was the intent of Renee's presentation, was to look at how it was going to work because they received a consolidation grant for, I believe, $3 million. Is that correct? And so they were putting it out there to see if there was any interest and if there was any small pumpers or small districts, co-ops that maybe were in the district boundaries and the district could take them over and we could use that money from their grant to
Well,
share the cost.
I read the presentation and it didn't look like there had been, of course, you can't necessarily tell from the presentation, but it didn't look like they had investigated who might want to consolidate. They just showed geographically where there might be a possibility of this being cost effective, but nothing about, well, do you want to consolidate?
I don't know that
Because
there,
you can't force people
I
to.
don't think there's any mutuals out there. I think it's all one well serves 2 to
In that
4
area,
houses. yeah.
in that area, you're
The
correct.
co-ops,
But there are some
yeah.
co-ops that they, what they did, Stan, they listed for some reason, they listed like the Stark well and they had Heritage Village well in there.
And
And we already paid money for those. Heritage Village wasn't approved, but they had already paid to mitigate those. So it didn't make sense to me why those were listed in there, but
Yeah,
I think it was just a general idea that these are the areas, if there is people that have a co-op and
mm-hmm.
they're having issues with their water, that they could consolidate with the water district, and the GA had some
Yeah.
money to help fund that.
Can I make a comment on this too? It is certainly the goal of the water district to allow the GA to tap into our expertise. The people that work here at the water district are experts on the local area, including the members of the board. So we're just hoping that they will value our input in projects beyond those consolidations that we have. And I believe there's some receptiveness to that because they've certainly asked for our input of what we think would be a good idea. Doesn't mean they're going to do it, what we ask with their consolidation money, but they certainly seem to be at least listening to our inputs.
Well,
Renee, do you have any comments about this?
I did get some questions from Stetson this week.
Oh.
About possibly looking at some scenarios using our hydraulic model and asking about the status of our current consolidations, timeline and stuff. And I think there seems to be more of an interest, and maybe it's being pushed by the state. I don't know, kind of that area west of where like Dune 3 is in the China Lake Acres area. There's definitely some little mutuals
Right.
out there that might be having some financial issues perhaps. I don't know, but that seems to be where they're concentrating their time. And of course, they are also interested in the Rademacher area too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I've sent them everything that we have on that because you might remember that Chuck Cordell's company was going to be doing a pipeline out there
Right,
before he
yeah.
passed away. So
Yeah.
we have those plans and everything on that. So
Okay.
on a different topic, I tried to keep track of any PAC meetings that happened. And I kept looking at my emails, thinking that there'd be an announcement for a PAC meeting, and I didn't get one. Does anybody know, was there a PAC meeting?
There was not.
I think Judy's going to answer what's going on with them.
Well, George also goes to
Yeah,
them.
that's right, he does. Yes, Judy.
Is it, may I speak on this general?
As long as you state your name first.
Oh, it's still Judy Decker.
Okay, thank you.
We have not had a PAC meeting since we discussed the well mitigation documents, which are now part of the Groundwater Authority's website. My understanding is, for one thing, our chairman, David Janik's family has some serious health issues. I don't know if that's part of the reason. I note that on the GA agenda for tomorrow is under the water manager's report. There's something about changes to the GSP. We have not received anything. We have not had a meeting almost for a year, I guess. I guess it is.
Been a while.
Right, thank you.
But I have some comments on well consolidation. As you know, this is part of the original GSP, that it was put in the original GSP, and Stetson Engineers is pushing it. And maybe the state, as Renee said, is also pushing it. But I'd like to point out something, and it's something that you really all know, but I'll point it out again. And that is, when you have small wells, such as the domestic shallow wells that Mallory and David and myself all have, their drawdown impact is minimal compared to if all those people were collected together and put on water district wells. You would have to use another big well over time. And is this really the best way to extend the life of our aquifer by putting everybody, not everybody, but say everybody that's south of 178 and east of 395 as an example. Is it really a good idea to put everybody on the water district's well system? Certainly, well owners will be paying a lot more for their water. They, but they won't have to worry about having to drill a new well, or is the pressure going to drop, or do they have a hole in their storage tank, or whatever the multitude of disasters that can happen to an individual water system. But the question to me is, that idea of doing that needs to be looked at carefully, because you have David's well over there at Brady and Las Flores. You have my well out there on South Rebus. You have Mallory's well out there on Sidner or wherever he is, and we're going plunk, plunk, plunk. But collectively putting us all together, I question the wisdom of that. And yes, the presentation that was made at the last meeting did concentrate on the area west of Dune 3. And they even mentioned the Sierra Breeze Trailer Park, which all of us who have lived here a long time know is the ultimate in water recycling. When you have however many residents there are there, George, and they all have their own little septic systems, and then their well is right there. I think, Ron, you can figure
I
it
know.
out. But yes, it wasn't that they were going to consolidate Stark, because they have already been given a portion of money to drill their own well. But there are quite a few people out there on 5-acre parcels with their own wells that are west and south of Dune 3. So, but there are many mutual, I am surprised at how many mutual or large co-ops, whatever, however they were organized, that there are. You know, George Bertrand has one that starts at Mahan Street and goes west right there, not too far north. I don't know what street it is, but it's not too far north of Peter Brown's office. They're all over the place. And people have told us they'll stop us in Walmart or wherever, and they'll complain to us about the system they're on, because, and Chuck mentioned it, whoever is in charge, they are not collecting the appropriate amount of funds to keep the system maintained and repaired. And it's unfortunate that this was done this way, rather than create an actual legal document that would pass on from one property owner to the other for the water issues. But that's the way it is. And the other area that is of concern, I think, is the area that is north of the little village of Inyokern. To say nothing of Inyokern, we won't go there. But there are all those mutuals. Some of them are huge. There's a huge one right there. You can see it. It's north of the SCE substation there. And there's all those people that are scattered around east and west of North Brown Road. And no one has mentioned them. So of course that is way out of the water district's territory. But it's nonetheless something that needs to be thought about. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
I believe that the current contract or grant from the state identified consolidation with the water district. Is that correct? That is the,
I think that's
the
the way it was
scope.
clarified.
and
Yes,
I'm not
with
sure
the-
why they did that, because it would seem that they ought to be trying to look at the most beneficial use of 3.5 or $6 million and consolidate wherever consolidation makes sense as opposed to, because it's kind of restrictive if they just limit it to water district consolidation. Not that I mind that, you know, I'm all in favor of consolidation, but if we're not the logical party to consolidate with, maybe there's a better use for that money. But on getting back to my original comment, Judy did touch on the fact that the GSP was what I was mostly concerned about. And according to the original schedule, there should be 6 draft chapters out now of the improved, updated GSP.
None.
And I think it's time that they either give those out to the public or figure out, you know, why they're not on schedule. Because all of a sudden, we're gonna run up to a point and they're gonna be so far behind that they'll never catch up. And then we'll get to the point where we were last time is, hey, we gotta have it in by a certain date, so we should just
Submit it.
just throw over the wall.
I'll ask
and-
that question on Wednesday when we get to the water manager's report. I'll ask where the updates are at because we did get told there was going to be updates. They gave a schedule for February, March, April, what they were going to do each month and move forward. And then, you know, it does concern me, as Judy said, there hasn't been a PAC meeting and they haven't
Yeah.
been involved. And I think it's very important that they,
Yeah, I mean, this came out about 4 or 5 months
Yep.
ago.
correct.
And
That was their
you-
preliminary, what they were going to do each month.
Yeah,
Correct.
so in any event, I think we need to track where, in fact, they could actually give a brief to the board on Wednesdays, you know, where are we and what have we done? What have we accomplished? And this is where we're heading. It just seems to me over the last year or two, there's less and less real technical information presented. Now, it makes for shorter meetings, which is good. But on the other hand, the public doesn't hear any of that, and neither does the board. The second topic I wanted to just briefly address was this month, May of 2024, is the 4-year anniversary of our solicitation to the city to join them in a partnership to develop recycled water. Our letter went to the city in May of 2020.
Yeah.
If the city would have agreed to work with us back then, we probably could have saved some of the $14 million that we have given over to the GA. And I think the public needs to know that. And it seems to me that the city, at some point in time, is going to have to admit that they are going to be willing to work with us.
Thank you,
Just
Stan.
my feeling.
Okay.
All right, I think Director
Yeah,
Boyd has a
just-
comment.
Just an observation, Judy's correct. The leadership of the PAC has been sidetracked with some medical issues in his family and he's currently out of town. But that shouldn't be an issue, right? If
Right.
Ron were to become ill, we would still run as a board. We have succession.
Right.
Of course, David would stand up. It just
Well,
occurs
maybe.
to me that maybe the GA ought to consider
An
an
alternate?
alternate structure for PAC leadership in Dave's absence. So suggest that the vice chairman actually run the PAC. and get
Okay.
this thing
I
back.
will ask those questions. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Good.
I think it's,
Yeah.
there's too much
There's a lot on the table.
there's a lot on the table that
Yes,
should
and it
be
needs to be
getting at
addressed,
least
so.
addressed, so.
Okay, and then also I want to comment on Judy's comment about the consolidation. And this is probably a statement more for Jason, but on consolidations, I agree with Judy in looking at that. What would we need to do as far as spreading the pumping out? If we did do some consolidations to take the burden off so we didn't create more of a cone, or would there be an issue?
Can I comment to that? Because I did spend some time at Aqua talking with some state.
Could Jason answer his question first?
Okay.
Thank you.
So what we need to do is get the Northwest Transmission Pipeline fixed
Correct.
first. That'll spread out the pumping. As far as doing these consolidations, I don't believe it's going to be enough of an impact to change the way the district currently operates. And I'm having a tough time with understanding how someone who potentially will use less water because of a higher bill would have a negative impact on the aquifer by moving over to our wells. I mean, the amount of water is the amount of water, but I think the district could easily, with its current format, accommodate the people in a consolidation.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted to understand, because I wanted to make sure that before we move forward, that we could accommodate.
Thank you, Chuck. I was getting ready to say the same thing, that we want to know if we can. And George, you had something?
Yeah, I had this very discussion with some state regulators about consolidations during a consolidation workshop at the Aqua Conference. And to Judy's point, one of the things that the state regulators pointed out to me is that these small mutuals are essentially exempt from California conservation as a way of life. They are not subject to the GPCD limits such as us. However, when they are consolidated into our system, they do become subject to those limitations. And while we don't limit any specific person, overall, the group of people we consolidate have to, as a whole, come into compliance with those rules. So what happens when you consolidate an area, those rules become applicable and they become part of our whole. And so if we were to consolidate a bunch of people, and we had this discussion, if we did a bunch of consolidations and they were using significantly more amounts of water than, say, our general population was using, we would have to come up with further regulations to reduce water use in some way to be in compliance. So there is the notion, and I believe Renee has looked at this, that some of the areas that we're looking at consolidations, the per capita use is actually very high compared to what we're doing. So there is an incentive for actual water reduction through consolidation.
I want to make a comment, because Jason mentioned as well that if we do take on some of these sections, I've been out in those areas out there, there's small homes. Most of them have no landscape whatsoever.
Right.
So we're talking about a small family, if not just a retired family. So their usage is going to be somewhere, what do we estimate for a family of 4.25 acre feet a year, or 0.13, something like that? So in fact, their usage would probably fall in line, especially with the only state requirement going on now is conservation as a way of life with the 55, 52, 40 gallons per day, which we're already meeting. So I don't think they're going to put a strain on that. So I don't think we'd be asking them to do much different than they are now. In fact, we may be more efficient with them.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Judy, yes?
Again, I mean, there are and it's easy to spot, of course. There are a few people that you can see obviously who live in the middle of a jungle. One wonders why they moved out into the country to look at the wide open spaces when they cover it all up with plants. But if you look at most of the people, they have few plants, and you mentioned some don't have any. And with the price of electricity continuing to rise, we just got two flyer things in our bill this
Yeah, I
month
saw that.
about asking again and again. It seems like every month Edison is asking for more money. As a well owner whose water comes by turning on the electric switch to get the electric motor to run the pump, that affects people as well. So, and many of the people who do live in the country are on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. And I think that's a fair statement, and especially in some of these mutuals. So that all has to be taken into consideration. And I have another comment. You mentioned the recycled water with the city, your comment about your letter to the city. By the time the city gets around to doing this, I have to wonder if the recycled water is in fact going to even cost more than the imported water we don't have in that pipeline. The costs are astronomical for everything these days. And it's a concern to me personally, but it's a concern to me socially for the people that live in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And one comment about consolidation as well. I think the main thing the state wants to assure is that people have access to a reliable, quality water source, that if their mutual or their co-op is breaking down because they haven't been taking care of it, if they're having issues that they're not able to handle, the state's biggest concern. So those are the ones that, in my opinion, that would either come to us or the GA would search out, not just randomly pick well owners like David, yourself, or someone who's got a good well. That's not to say, at some time they may say we want to consolidate, but I think the money needs to be spent on those that are are letting their systems, I hate to say the word fail, but they may be. And there will be a sticker shock because, Judy, if you're correct in that they haven't been collecting the right amount of money to maintain the system on a mutual, then all of a sudden they hook to the water district and their bill is $55 a month. They're going to, when they've been paying nothing, let's say, or I'm not sure how the typical amount that a mutual would collect from their people, but I've heard it before. They just don't collect enough money to maintain the system properly. And if they had a major failure, that could be an issue.
In some of the mutuals and small cooperatives, there are people who are receiving water who refuse to pay.
Yeah, that's
So the
right. I've
people
heard
who are
that.
running those organizations don't have the finances to do all of the necessary testing and maintenance that's required by the state.
Yeah.
And that's not just an issue here in the Indian Wells Valley, that is statewide. And the state would like us, like water companies, to absorb as many of those as possible. But that is not something that I think the water district would do without without the mutual requesting it first, and without the state or some other organization providing the funds for the absorption, because it is an expensive proposition. You have to replace most of the equipment, if not all of it, that their current mutual is using. And it's something that you have to really consider whether you want to proceed with it or not.
Not to mention the distance of some of these places. If they're not near anywhere where we can do a convenient extension of the system, you may have to invest millions of dollars to pick up just a couple people out there on
Yeah.
Brown Road. So but the point is, we do look at all that and we will continue to.
You
think we
remember a
should.
few years ago that we were asked to look into providing service to Randsburg, which they have found another solution for, which is working quite well, but that was a thank you, no.
All right. Anything else you
No,
want
I
to put
have
on this,
nothing
Chuck?
else.
Anything else from the
Thank you
board?
guys for your comments, and I will try to remember
Any
all of
more
them
from
on
the-
Wednesday.
The public, no one? All right.
Right.
So we'll close 9C and move on to 9D, comprehensive adjudication. Jim, is there anything you'd like to report?
Yeah, I have a couple things that I'd like to report. The first one would pertain to parcel owners overlaying the basin that have not yet filed an answer and entered into the adjudication. Our posting was completed in March, and so answers should be filed. They're due sometime around the end of May. It actually was 60 days after the notice was either posted on the property or put on a door hanger. So those persons that are desiring to still enter into the adjudication should file an answer soon. The judge extended the appearance fee waiver of $1,000, so it's free to file an answer right now. And if you go to the district's website under basin adjudication, how to file an answer, very basic instructions how to do it. It's very simple. Pretty much put your name and address and sign it. So answers are becoming due quickly. The next point pertains to initial disclosures. These pertain to those persons that are already a party to the adjudication and to those persons that may file an answer here in the near future. Initial disclosures are due on May 17th. That's a requirement by the code, and it's generally imposed on the parties early in an adjudication. You have to list your pumping for a 10-year period. I think ours is 2011 to 2020, where your pump is, what your water was put to use for, commercial, domestic, agricultural, anything like that. The purpose is to really give the court a broad overview to see what's going on with the basin in terms of pumping currently right now. So those are coming up. We're working on the districts. And we'll file that on Friday, May 17th, and I'll provide a copy to the board, and it'll also be on the district's website as well. The last comment on the adjudication is we have a hearing set for June 14th, 1:30, like the other ones are. Um, one, one matter that will be ruled upon is the case management order pertaining to the Phase 1 trial. Um, Board may recall that the court set the Phase 1 trial for April 28th, I believe. I might have the date wrong, but it's April of 2025. And so the case management order basically sets forth timelines in which you would begin and terminate discovery, when expert witnesses and disclosures would go. So it would be a timeline from the present leading up to the trial as to when things would be due. We suspect that'll be approved. Most parties have already approved it. We've gone through a meet and confer process. Another matter that will be heard is, it's our understanding that Searles Valley Mineral is going to make a request for a Phase 2 trial. Phase 1 pertains to the Federal Reserve right. Searles' request is going to include safe yield and possibly groundwater storage that the judge kind of just passed on last time. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get another trial date set for maybe later in 2025 or soon thereafter. The last thing that'll be heard, it's called an order to show cause regarding the basin boundary. All of the major pumpers, including Navy, GA, we all agree that the basin boundary should be the same boundary that is in DWR Bulletin number 118. It is the one that was used by the GA. So there's a requirement, if anybody wants to argue there's a different basin boundary, that would occur on June 14th. We haven't received any objections, and would expect that the DWR basin boundary would be deemed on the 14th to be the basin for purposes of the adjudication. Last thing, although not related to the adjudication, and I believe it's in the morning, but the GA has a motion basically to enforce the preliminary injunction GA has a motion for preliminary injunction that they're bringing against Mojave, which basically would cut them off from pumping on the basis that they haven't paid the replenishment fee. They have appealed it to the Supreme Court. It's my understanding the Supreme Court is supposed to come up with an answer within a week. However, the Supreme Court has the authority to continue when they might rule upon that. So it's on calendar right now, but it may be further continued. That's all I've got for recent developments on the adjudication. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Just for
Thank you, Jim.
clarification for the public, so the disclosure is due on the 17th. Does that mean it needs to be in the court's hands on the 17th or post-stamp the 17th? How's
Generally, when you file with the court, you file it online. But if you go to the district's website, I believe that the district, we are maybe collecting some of the initial disclosures, and we will make the filing for it. If somebody put it in on the 20th, I'm sure that wouldn't negate it at all. And for those persons that, received a posting after, you've got 60 days on the initial disclosure. It's a hard date, but I think if you miss it by a couple of days, nobody's gonna, ignore it.
Am I correct that there's no obligation that they have to follow the example that's on our website is just an example of something? It's not the absolute requirement?
The form is, the form was prepared by the district to assist those that didn't have an attorneys. I will say this, Stan, is that the initial disclosure is required pursuant to code, and it's CCP 832, I believe. But if you go to that code, it specifically lists the information that is required in that code, and it's right next, and we put that information right next to it so you can see how to fill out the form, but there is no strict requirement that the form be used.
But we think we followed basically what the state wants in terms of the code, so.
If you
So
prepared-
it can't go wrong by using our example, but they don't have to use our example.
I agree with that. That's correct.
Thank you, Jim. Any other comments or discussion from the board or from the public?
Yes, it's Judy Decker. A couple of months ago when I brought this up, Jim, you got very upset with me and I think you misunderstood what I said. So I'm saying it again. There are people out there, well owners, who have never heard from the district. I don't know who they all are, but I know that because people have told us, they have heard that they've asked Joe Blow, that's not his name, of course. Excuse me, Joe. But, and he will know nothing about it. He never received a notice. He never received anything in writing. I don't know, they don't watch you on the internet. Most people who live out in the country, I think it's safe to say they do not get either newspaper. So what will happen to these people that have not heard from you? I don't know. I will give you an example. It's ourselves. We have two pieces of property and we live on both. One of them, of course, is here in the district. The other one is out in the county. Now, the tax collector knows exactly where to send the property tax bill, which is to our city address on Ward Street. And yet, we received, and I think this was in March, went to our property and, well, I gave it to you. There was rolled up the set of papers about this stuck between the fence post and the gate. It should have been sent to our Ridgecrest address, which you have. I don't know how many people there are like that. But there are people who have never, ever received anything about this. And the deadline is, it's actually Thursday because you guys are closed on Friday. So to give it to the water district or put it on your website, there won't be no employee here on Friday to look at it. I don't know what you're going to do about all these people, and I don't know how many of them. I don't know if there's 10 of them or if there's 100 of them, but they exist,
May I?
of course.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't mean, if I got upset, I didn't mean to. And I do not dispute the fact that there may be people out there that have not received anything. Here's what I can tell you, is that the district sent out over 20,000 certified mailers to the overlying property owners.
I know that.
Let me finish. And so we went ahead and we did that. And then we knew that not everybody received the mailer. So we went to court and we said it wasn't practical to post a notice on every parcel. A lot of those were very remote outside of the district. Didn't seem it like make sense to do that. Court agreed and they told us what to do. Part of it was publication in a newspaper. part of it was social media ad, everything that we were required to do in addition to sending the mailers, we did that, and the court signed off on it. A year later, the issue was raised by the GA, saying that somehow possibly it wasn't complete. So the district had a couple of options, one of which was to go ahead and do what the court said we didn't have to do the first time, and that is to physically post notice of the adjudication on each parcel overlying the basin that we were unable to confirm received that certified letter. Now, somebody might say they didn't receive it, but we have proof that it was dropped off at that property. So if we couldn't establish that, back in March, we physically had an army of people going out and put either door hangers, postings on the property, again, notice of the adjudication. Now, we have done that. I do not see us doing anything further. I don't think we're required to do anything further. I think whatever we did further probably would not generate the results that we thought. Most of the postings that we did were located within the district boundaries. If you're in the district boundaries served by the district, you're not going to drill a well. You really don't even have to appear in the adjudication. So I would say that, and in the other adjudications, there are always allegations and complaints that not everybody received the notice. And I'm not going to argue with you about that, but I will tell you that the district has taken extraordinary steps above and beyond what is required by the law to try to notify these people what's going on out there, from 3 different types of publications, workshops. So I don't know what else we can do, Judy.
Well, maybe the question should be, what will happen to these people who don't fill out a disclosure form? The one person that I know about, because we talked to him, he's older than we are. He lives within the district. He lives on his property.
So
If they don't fill it out, will their water right
Well,
be
no.
denied?
First thing, Judy, I thought you were talking about the answer because you were talking about people that had not received anything.
Well, this
So-
person says he did not.
Well, then how's he asking about the initial disclosure if he doesn't know anything about the lawsuit?
We told him about it.
The initial disclosure, I mean, for him to file the initial disclosure, he should file an answer first. To file an initial disclosure and not make an appearance doesn't do anything. He needs to file an answer to become a party to the lawsuit. Once he does that, in terms of the initial disclosure, go to the district's website. It literally walks people through how to prepare that initial disclosure. It's not legalese. It's just very simple questions about what they have pumped, where they have pumped for the past 10 years. Go to the district's website. There's great information out there. It feels like nobody reads it.
Jim, I'd like to make. a
No, let me
comment
say,
real-
I
real
want
quick
to,
about
I'm asking for a comment, both you and Jim. I think this is a good time to explain what is truly going to happen with those people, like myself, a piece of property that I didn't put anything in, or it may be somebody with an individual well who didn't put anything. I think, Jim, you and Doug summed that up for us, and because we do want to protect those people.
Let me ask
I
you a
don't
question.
think that if somebody doesn't file an initial disclosure, that is a small pumper, it's not going to, they're not going to forfeit their right. We're trying to get the court is through the code, trying to get an idea of what's going on out there. I will say with respect to small pumpers, the district, whether they file an answer or not, it's the district's intent to protect de minimis small pumpers in this valley. And we will continue to do that. So with or without the filing of an initial disclosure, that's the district's position.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was kind of my
Yeah, Chuck,
question that I
please.
wanted to clarify with you, Jim, in front of Judy, because I think that's where the public is a little bit scared.
They
Like
are
Judy's
scared.
question was, if somebody doesn't file, are we going to get shut off? And no, that is not our intent. Never has been the intent of this water district board. I assure you of that, and I assure the citizens of that. whatever, if you don't file, you're gonna just, whatever is decided, that's gonna be the judgment. So whatever the allocation is for the small pumpers, that's what it will be.
Right.
And that would include everybody. It's not gonna say, because Judy did not file, she can't pump any water. We're not gonna shut off anybody's water. We're not gonna prevent anybody from drilling a well in the future. That may have to go to the water master to get it approved. But we're not limiting growth or trying to harm any de minimis user.
Right.
We,
I get the message. I will pass on to you that, I have heard from people who spend their time on Facebook or whatever, social media, which I do not do, that, you're going to meter everybody, or the GA has put meters on everybody's well. It's these kinds of things that, are basically destroying the proper communication methods in my book. And I wanted to bring it out to you again. I tried a couple of months ago when we talked about this. You misunderstood what I said, Jim. You thought I was talking about something else. Even Chuck noted it afterwards. But it is unfortunate that we have two newspapers, and at this point in time, they only come out once a week. Maybe y'all should put something on the local radio station for this week. Or on Facebook if you have if you do that.
We
I
do
don't-
have a Facebook page and we put regular
Well,
messages out about this
it
kind of
might
stuff.
be a good
And you
idea
help.
to put it as an attention getter, to say, attention, domestic well owners, but, and then put in whatever you want. And try to get more people engaged, because, you know, I find it hard to believe that they didn't get anything, but then these people have said that they didn't. And, you know, you're not gonna say you're a liar, because I don't know that they didn't get it. And the fact that you didn't send us the notice, you put it on our fence when you have our own address. I mean, it was a fluke that happened, and that kind of stuff happens all the time. But the more people you can get engaged and on your side, the better you'll be. And I will note that you are not the only large pumper that is in this adjudication. And they are not all domestic well owner friendly.
Judy, you make a point. I mean, if we had the magic bullet to get people to read things, understand things, and respond to them, I'd love to know what that is, because we've been saying it up here for years, and almost every board has,
Right.
that you can't force them to a newspaper. You can't force them to, you know, I know there's people on Facebook and such, and Renee is one of them too. If she sees some real misinformation, she'll correct it. And I know people that will, but we can't, everyone's, I mean, there's still people out there who believe the water district is run by the city. There's still people who believe that. I mean, yeah. So you see where I'm getting at with this. There's certain people that just, I just don't know how you do it.
I'm just offering you a
Yeah.
suggestion for a last ditch push on that.
Thank
There's a
you.
lot of
Thank you,
people
Judy.
Who've received it and have not filed because they've chosen not to file. I and the other people on our well have not filed to be a part of the lawsuit. And there's people who've received it and threw it away as junk mail. So the only way you could get 100% coverage, which I think is unrealistic, is to hire process servers and to go and track each person down. And from experience in the family back east, trying to serve some process on my stepdaughter's ex-husband, even though the sheriff is a relative, they can't seem to find the guy. He's very, very, so.
But, you know, and Judy makes a point about, I think Jim said it and Chuck said it, that statement about how what we're attempting to do, the adjudication, that we want to protect those small pumpers. We want to protect those pieces of vacant land. And what we propose happens with that. I think that needs to be just blasted over and over and over again, because that is an argument that opponents are bringing up, that you don't care about the small pumpers. You're going to take their water away.
So it's.
So we need to get that
those-
out there.
Then that type of fear is being stoked by people who are interested in disrupting uh, the adjudication and
Yes.
coming to a reasonable solution to the water issues.
The
It's an
people I
election
was
year.
referring to are people who live here. It's not, there's acres and acres of vacant land.
Right.
We think the property next to us might be owned by the communist Chinese government. I don't know. They don't speak English anyway. But no, I was referring to people who actually live on their land. And now that they know about it, why they didn't contact you is another thing. As I mentioned, the one person, his wife is ill and he's older than we are. But he said and he's lived there forever. He said he did not get anything. I don't know if that includes the very first postcard that the district sent out. I remember that postcard.
Well, Judy, I just want to reassure you that
It's not it wasn't a postcard. It was a
Oh,
package.
it was a
Uh,
packet.
I understand, because we got the packet rolled up in the fence, but so I would think if somebody got a packet like that, they would open it up and see what it was at any rate. But maybe he really didn't get it.
I
And
think
these
we-
other people the same way. They,
I think we've done everything a reasonable organization could be expected to do to reach as many people as possible. The second round was kicked off by the Groundwater Authority in an attempt to delay the adjudication. And I think that at some point you have to say you've done as well as you can do. And
well,
it's time
that's
to move on.
probably correct, but I wanted you to be aware of it. And I again offered, use the big gossip column in the sky and put a last ditch message on there.
Well, I just want to say one thing, Judy. Since this has started, our intention as a board setting together, having these meetings has been to essentially not cost the small pumpers anything. From the start, we waived the fee. We all agreed that that was the best thing to do, so nobody had to pay to file if they wanted to file for a right. We have never discussed metering anybody's de minimis.
Oh, well, I know all that, Chuck.
Okay, I just want to clarify with you, because none of that, we have never discussed any of that.
You aren't going to meter the small well
No,
owner.
no,
And
we'll get shot.
neither is the GA, because even if they wanted to, I can't imagine April going out and installing meters and reading them.
They have to find them first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, Judy, one of the reasons why everybody has to be contacted is driven more by the Navy than anybody else. We have to do what is called a comprehensive adjudication, meaning everybody's included and everybody is accounted for.
It's a good
Or-
idea.
And so the Navy has forced this on us, and we have done due diligence. And there's just not a whole lot more we can do.
Just to take you back in time, 38 years, I pushed for this when I got on the board in 1986. Should have
Oh.
been done then.
Oh, one
For
thing
one
that
thing, it would have been cheaper.
one thing we could consider doing, and I'm not sure, I mean, I don't want to talk about a time, but in the future, at some date, whether it be 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever, is start having public workshops to let the public know where we are and what we've accomplished. Obviously, not everything can be talked about in public now, but obviously, as the court appearances go on, there'll be more and more information that is firmed up and everybody agrees to, and then we can have some public workshops, make announcements of those public workshops, and get a big enough room that everybody in the town, if they want to, can come and listen. Because a lot of it, I think, is just fear of the unknown, and
Well,
sooner we
fear of the
can-
gossip that has been put out as misinformation.
yeah, well, we got to counter there's, like you're pointing out, there's misinformation coming out from multiple areas, and that's what we got to counter. And the only way you can counter misinformation is by providing real information.
All right.
I
Anything
think
else?
that's a
Last
good
thing.
idea, Stan.
I think that's a great idea, and I do agree, maybe in the next, 90 days, we'll be in a position to hold a workshop that's meaningful. And Judy, we will continue to send out our social media blasts and other blasts related to the adjudication, notwithstanding supposed deadlines.
All right. Anything else? All right. Hearing none, I think we can move on to the next subject, which is the exciting part of the agenda, the general manager and staff update.
Okay, well, let's see, above and beyond the adjudication, we actually have a water district to run and customers supply water with, so we'll give some data on that. Try not to take too long, so I believe I got the wrong month there. It should be April, 152 million gallons, which was up from 129 million gallons in 2023. So it's one of the few times we've started to see an actual uptick in water production from year to year, month to month comparison. So we had 108 million gallons consumed. That's about 11% commercial, 4% other, and about 85% residential. About 11 million gallons of estimated loss, most of that to meter inaccuracy. No injuries for February 2024. The conservation numbers are really pretty much a repeat, but they're always worth repeating. This 2007 number of 9,198 acre feet produced down to 5,224 is 43% reduction. Once again, always giving the town and the water board and the water district and all our customers credit for those reductions in conservation efforts. We talk about compared to from 2013, we're down 30%. And we just see this continual decline, still 16% down since 2020. Our Water Smart program, which is fantastic. And a lot of people talking about that at the Aqua Conference as well, about how we're doing, notifying people of small leaks or large leaks and helping to prevent them from getting excessive bills. And I was working with our customer service team again last week or the week before last, and helping, trying to work on some customers who had some issues. So any questions on that? Okay, next slide. Oh, okay, if mine would update here. So we're looking at public outreach. So I'll look around like this. Okay, so we have, oh, here we go. So upcoming stuff. We're gonna be doing some photo and video PR updates on June 4th. And Judy will be happy to know that some of those will include additional information for people in participating in the adjudication and filing their initial disclosures. We had an employee morale lunch on May 2nd before Cinco de Mayo. That went really well. Social media, I'll spend a minute talking about this, Judy. You said you're not on Facebook. We have a very active Facebook page with a lot of people that get views and clicks, and we put that information out there. We also have an email subscriber list. You can subscribe to our email and you'll get automatic notifications from the water district. In addition to that, we have our webpage, which has a ton of information. So we spend a lot of time and effort actively trying to push information out to the public. And we understand that not everybody's on Facebook and not everybody has email. And, we try to do it through all means possible. But, it's always good to report, and here in my report here, I said that we have more initial disclosure, frequently asked questions and guidance that we updated recently just to help people out who are trying to do these. So that is on our website. It has been pushed out in our emails and on our Facebook page. So we, again, just reading what everybody said, we're doing our very best to help everybody. I've personally helped people who have actually walked into the water district with the paperwork and, they've got questions about this or that. And well, I can't tell them what to put down. I can certainly show them our guidance. And, I think those of us at the water district are really doing our very best to not only help everybody, but to also encourage everybody to participate. We think that's good for everybody. Not a lot to report under the news media. If we go to the next slide, I'll give you some highlights from the Aqua convention that we attended. They had a pretty significant update session on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, and we'll talk about like, I wanted to just compare us. They gave a Tulare subbasin update, which is over where Corcoran is. They've had something like 5 feet of subsidence across, or 4 feet across the whole town, you know, so they've got some serious stuff. Their recharge is 300,000 acre feet a year, which seems like an incredible amount of recharge into that subbasin. However, they're pulling 500,000 plus acre feet a year out, and they're overdrafting that subbasin by 200,000 acre feet a year. It's kind of just a piece of the San Joaquin Valley. So they talk about these, the San Joaquin Valley is just divided into dozens and dozens and dozens of small districts. Jim, you can probably help me out here.
It's right, they've broken up the San Joaquin Basin into some. They broke up the San Joaquin Valley Basin into sub-basins, so it was more manageable. The Tulare is just north of the Kern County sub-basin.
And these are generally all pretty much interconnected subbasins. So if you've seen the news where this Tulare Lake is sort of formed, it's somewhat in that area. So we also found out that the state has intervened in several of these basins, including this Tulare subbasin. So the state came in, their GSP was considered inadequate. And so the state came in and they apparently imposed a $300 fee for each well and $20 an acre foot for whatever was being pumped out. And I guess you can imagine when $20 an acre foot doesn't sound like a lot, but when you start multiplying that by 500,000 acre feet of pumping a year, that's a pretty good chunk of change.
Will they take us over?
I think that the likelihood that we're very high on the state's radar is very low. I mean, clearly, I think one of the things I got out of this conference was really sort of, I was somewhat surprised at I didn't hear anybody talk about the types of fees that we have with the, you know, $2,000 an acre foot replenishment fee. I didn't hear anything like that. So I guess the bad case scenario when they say the state's going to come in and take over is, you know, it's just sort of $300 well, $20 an acre foot. But the state will, if you don't pay, they will put a lien on your property and they will take your property away from you. So take that for what it's worth. That's kind of what we learned at the Aqua, but it was good to look at another basin that was, you know, tremendously worse off than we are, I'd just say. I know, especially with the subsidence of 4 to 5 feet across almost the entire town. So we talked about, they had some interesting stuff on some legal updates about, I guess, a Otay Community Service District in San Diego. Between the two of them, they had some Sigma-related water fees. And they had to return something like $100 million to their customers because those fees were not directly related and not proportional to the cost of service. So this is another, you know, just one of those notes that, you know, you got to be careful about how you construct these fees, whether you're, you know, these aren't our fees, but they were certainly imposed on other water districts. So you have to look at that. They did have a consolidation update as well that I sat through, and I think we kind of beat consolidations to death earlier. And, you know, I feel like we're doing the right thing in the consolidation area, and that's you know, that's great. I will say that I asked the question because we did raise some concerns over the contract that we had, and the state was aware of the other entities that raised the same concerns you did, Jim, and they did duly noted, and they're working on their language. I thought this was interesting, and hopefully Mallory, who was there as well, heard this as well. That the latest estimate that they kind of tossed out there about agricultural land that's to be fallowed due to Sigma was somewhere between the 700,000 to 1 million acre range across the state of California. That is going to be a tremendous economic impact to the state and to agriculture in general. So we certainly have our issues over here, but like that's on a statewide level. When you look at those numbers, that's pretty incredible. So Aqua is, the convention is incredibly valuable, not only for the connections you make, but for some of the view into other water districts, the issues that they're facing that sometimes seem monumental to the things that we face, as difficult as the situation we find ourselves in is. So
The groundwater
questions on that?
report had some positive news. They had credited the state as recovering 4 million acre feet of water replenished back into the groundwater supplies as a result of actions that they took last year. Now, on the downside, though, they didn't really go into descriptions of how they did that. I talked with our geologist, Tim Parker was there, and he does not believe there are many injection facilities in California, so these were probably percolation basins. And of course, the validation that that water is actually getting down in the groundwater is a little, right, unless they had monitoring wells that they had surveyed before the percolation came in. It's not real clear that the 4 million acre feet of water is accurate, but that's what they're claiming right now. And whatever actions they took to achieve that 4 million acre feet are being ramped up this year in anticipation that they're going to have another bountiful release of water. The other thing that George didn't mention, and I know this will be delightful to the board, the governor came in and spent 20 minutes with us Wednesday morning, and he was principally talking about the Delta pipe project, which he's really been trying to push. You know, this is the pipe project that would benefit folks south of the Bay Area significantly. It's a follow-on to Governor Brown's project where they had the two pipes. This is now a one pipe solution. It's more inland. It's bigger, better. It's 34 feet in diameter. It's a massive project. And they're very hopeful, and the state's trying to, we'll see, work through all of the objections and barriers, the CEQA and all this permitting and all that to try to get that underway next year. So, but it'll take, I think they said, what, 4 miles a year is how much they anticipate drilling?
Yeah,
It's
I had
pretty
a
slow process.
really monumental machine that was in there that would be drilling through solid bedrock, essentially 30 plus, like you said, 34 feet in diameter, probably bigger than that to get the concrete lining in and whatnot. But yeah, I think that was probably pretty close. It was
That's a
not a fast mover.
43-mile project, so this will take, it might get done before the high-speed rail.
The costs are astronomical right now. The agriculture, they can't afford to buy in. It would be like you come up here to pay the replenishment fee. You just can't do it. And a lot of the communities are balking at it too. So
The recovery, the water.
and this is Governor Newsom's pipeline.
Okay.
It ain't cheap.
I'd like to make a comment if I may.
Sure.
First of all, I don't know if you read, speaking of Governor Newsom, he is in trying to adjust his budget, the pluses and the minuses. I read just this week that he is taking 500 million that was going to be for water storage in the state. He's X'd that out for this next year anyway. And as you know, I hope that they have, in the process of doing things, have destroyed at least 2 dams, I believe, in the state that no longer will be holding water for the dry times. I'd also like to point out something to you folks. We have subsidence in this valley. If you go to Gateway and Bowman and then drive slowly west on Bowman, be careful you don't get run over by speeders, but you will observe going west from Gateway to China Lake Boulevard that the road goes like this. That's subsidence from long ago, from the Bowman, the old Bowman Alfalfa Ranch and Dairy that was in that area in the 30s and early 40s.
Well, thank you for that. I'd like to comment too, I'll just relate an anecdotal story because, we're here, and Sigma was founded on local control. And, I look around this boardroom and the people that are here, this is local control and this is local people. I was talking to a gentleman who was trying from Palmdale, and he was saying, oh, we had all this water runoff and excess water runoff, and I said, well, did you try to capture it and, put a dam up and maybe get it to soak into your aquifer? Because he had talked about how it was headed towards Edwards Air Force Base, and he went, oh, no, we can't do that. Edwards doesn't want the water to run on. I'm thinking like local control here is probably, I suspect the base doesn't want a big flood going onto the base. The local control there, the base is completely in favor because all that water runs out on the big salt lake that they use as a landing pad, and the water melts the salt and flattens the lake and allows it to be a landing area. So understanding your local conditions is really important, and that's a big part of what we see here is because we do see local people who know and understand, and we have board members who are local people and understand the conditions, and I really think that leads to the best results, and that's an important lesson you also get when you go to these conferences. Any other questions? Next one. Okay, regulatory updates. Want to thank Renee. We submitted our state report, and she updated our population numbers from ones that had been previously reported based on state guidance to the more accurate ones that where did you get those from, Renee? The actual ones with
The AquaView, which is that program we're using for the outdoor landscape numbers. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
so-
actually have census tracked information in there. So
Yeah, so we were looking at our GPCD, under the California Conservation as a Way of Life. At the 39,000, we were at 77.75 GPCD, but when you use the more realistic and accurate 31,000, we're at 95. The state website says our target's 155, so we're well below that. And this isn't the most hot or the most high use water month, but still great numbers for us. Talk a little bit about EV mandates. We're exploring low or no cost upgrades to support future EV charging if needed. And Jason's sort of taking the lead on that. And there may be some programs in place with Southern California Edison. We're going to find out. We don't know at this time, but we're exploring that to see if that could be done. And we're also looking at a Carl Moyer grant to get a new backhoe. We haven't had a lot of response from CARB at the state level, so we're engaging locally to look at that, see other grants that we can get. Any questions on those things? Next slide. Okay, I think I'm gonna turn that over to Ty for some special topic on EVs.
Yeah, this is just kind of an update and a little more information on the EV mandates. As you know, it applies to any state or local government in California that has vehicles. And it applies to vehicles with the GVWR of 8,500 pounds or more. So this is our current inventory in this table. The bottom row would be those that fall under the 8,500 gross vehicle weight rating, which we have 2 passenger cars and 7 different trucks, F-150s, Ranger, Chevy Colorado, I believe. But it would apply to like we got 5 F-250s, 3 F-350s, 9 F-450s, our backhoes, Gannons, water trucks, flatbeds, dump trucks. It actually wouldn't apply to the vac truck because it's a 2-engine vehicle. So that one would be exempt. Next slide. So these vehicles, when replaced, would have to be replaced with zero emission vehicles such as battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell. Hybrid electric vehicles are not considered. So like your Priuses and whatnot, if there were a similar format for the larger vehicles, would not be considered as a zero emission vehicle. And there are plug-in hybrids, but it has to have a certain minimum all-electric range. Next slide. So this all kicked in January 1st, 2024, and according to our purchase schedule, because we were not doing the milestone, which requires replacement of X number of vehicles per year, and only a 13-year life on your vehicles, and then they have to be replaced. But 50% from January 2024 through 2026, 50% of all new vehicle purchases have to be zero emission vehicles. That jumps up to all purchases starting January 1st, 2027. Um,
How is this enforced?
we have to submit a report every year to the California Air Resources Board, so I would imagine they would be the enforcing agency. Currently, with our current internal combustion engines, there is no end of life requirement. We can run the current vehicles as long as they'll run. Also, if we do a rebuild on them and to extend the life, that is also allowable right now. Currently, that's our plan to see how this kind of pencils out. Hopefully, there's a great awakening at the state level and this is overturned or repealed, but I don't know.
They don't show any signs of awakening.
No.
You mentioned
yet.
before that a lot of these vehicles, there aren't suitable EV replacements.
Right. When there isn't a current vehicle in the market for replacement that is a zero emissions, then they are exempt and we can replace them with other like internal combustion.
Yeah, when you look at that first slide where he lists the actual vehicles that we have, there's no F-250s, there's no F-450s, there's no F-350s. I mean,
Lightning is a 150, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
that-
it's below
They
8,500.
quit making those, I believe.
And yeah,
Generator in the back to charge that.
Yeah, so
Worse than buggy.
oddly enough, there is a company out there that makes an electric backhoe of some sort. I don't know if it's actually available or not. But there's some weird stuff coming out.
Yeah.
I would not want to put somebody in a ditch below an electric backhoe when you're trying to lift something and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it lock up at that point and you have no control.
Yeah,
And electric with water projects too. I
Not
mean,
be a
electricity
good
and water is
mix.
not great.
that's why we're trying to get a new backhoe before we're forced into that. But
So we're also
crazy.
currently tracking the mileage and hours used of vehicles so that if there is an electric vehicle, but it can't meet our demands, then we could file for an exemption as well.
Yeah, and the other option was like by certain year, you had to have 10% of your vehicles had to be electric. and
Yeah.
By a certain year, 2035, 50% of your vehicles had to be electric. And I mean, so there are no good options.
Yeah.
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 Hey, they haven't even talked about the potential cost of this. Eventually we'll get there. I think it'll shock you.
So, and the fact that like you know, the vehicles you maybe could replace, like an F-150, they don't even, there's no incentive to even do that.
The National Socialist Workers' Party in Germany in the 1930s, realizing that none of them could organize a picnic, discovered that you didn't actually have to control the means of production. You just had to be able to regulate it so that the people who were doing the production would fall in line with your demands. And that seems to be a strategy that's being used increasingly to get people out of combustion engines and into electric vehicles. The market for which has collapsed because everybody who wants one has one. And now, of course, they've stopped the electric 150 because it has terrible performance. They can't sell them. And the current economic situation has it so they can't even sell their gasoline-powered pickup trucks, some of which reached a ridiculous amount of $100,000 for a fully tricked out truck. I'm sorry, they're destroying their own market.
Ford actually reported they're losing $135,000 for every electric vehicle they sold.
They
I
probably
believe
do
that.
better if they just gave them away.
Yeah.
Nobody.
That I know.
Okay.
We do.
Oh, well, you should see the videos out of France where the electric public transportation buses, everybody's suddenly bailing out of the bus and within moments of the last person slipping out the window, it exploded. So yeah, it's a terrible idea.
So
I saw him parked over there. Yeah.
So the board had asked for an update on this.
Right.
Did we answer you guys' questions with
Yes,
the
sir.
particular presentation?
Yeah, no, I think you
Absolutely.
did. And I think that what we're looking for as time goes on, not right now, is as these things get closer, cost and expected, because it's something
Yeah,
We-
there's
yeah.
just no costs out there
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
equipment yet. It's
Yeah.
not available. Yeah.
are you still going to look at if we could get a charging at the cost?
I
Yeah.
think we have to, we actually have a call or a Zoom meeting scheduled
Okay.
tomorrow with
Yeah.
Edison to
Yeah,
see
Jason's looking at
about that.
putting in some infrastructure that would support it should it ever be needed.
ever
at
be,
lower reduced
yeah.
cost. But obviously it's not something we're going to do unless it's pretty much free.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'd have to. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Has Aqua shown any interest in trying to get involved in changing the legislation? Or is there anybody else that we could work with that I mean,
I'll be honest, I talked to a number of people at Aqua. I did not see a single presentation on EV stuff. Huh?
Not on this.
I mean, it is almost,
It's fading.
it's
Well,
just almost like everybody's ignoring it, but
it just seems to me there ought to be some group. I mean, I don't know what group, but there ought to be some group that should be interested in, what about the Kern County of Governments or, I just.
There are a number of
How
organizations.
can such a bad idea just keep going?
In the Aqua newsletter, they did address the fact that they and a number of organizations and special districts were fighting this mandate, trying to modify the mandate so be more reasonable. So people are tackling it.
okay.
All right.
Hmm.
Next,
Oh, do we have a caller? Do I see a caller or? I assume it's on this topic, so. George, you ready to take a caller? They
Of
just,
course.
yeah. Rather than wait till the end of your presentation.
It is.
I believe it's Renee.
That would be a good guess, yeah.
We circle back? Okay, once you get the caller on,
So
we'll
I
answer the
have some-
question. Okay, George.
I have some updates that I'll go through real quick, not from the January 2024 workshop. Yes, we are moving ahead very well and getting our work done with the cost of the pipeline, and we'll be presenting the board soon with new information. We have a meeting scheduled with LADWP in the near future for the board and myself to have a chat with them. And we are working feverishly on our next year's fiscal budget, and those are going quite well as well and making good progress. So all those things that you've asked me to do are maybe not on your timeline, but they are certainly getting done, sir.
They're getting done. That's the main thing. All right. Thank you. I guess, George, you don't, your report or
I
or
believe
public
so.
outreach, I
What's
guess.
the
it's
next slide?
Public outreach?
No,
Nope.
Northwest Transmission
No.
Pipeline.
Oh, the Northwest Transmission line looks like it's.
Yeah, I can
next.
give the
Yes.
quick updates on these
Please
things.
do.
We're still working with the contractor on submittals. There's only a few more submittals. They are waiting for a ship date on the valves, the butterfly valves. And once they have that, we'll be able to schedule, they'll be able to confirm their mobility, when they're going to mobilize. And then we'll have our pre-con scheduled. They expect early July to be able to mobilize.
Unless
So,
it's in Baltimore Harbor.
yeah, right.
Right. Is,
Yeah. So, that's what we're expecting right now. So hopefully in June by that time, we'll, have a pre-con scheduled.
what kind of coordination taking place with the base on the intertie? Because the intertie goes in that line, does it not?
Well, we are doing our part, then they will do their part
Okay.
separately.
All right.
Yeah.
I also would like to report that the $3 million check did clear.
Oh,
the bank.
good. Yeah. all right.
You can't cancel it now.
Because that would really bounce high if it bounced, right?
It's not a $15 fee, is it?
All right. Okay, is that any questions on the pipeline?
No.
We can move on to Dune 3 and Hometown Water.
Yeah, our consolidations, I'm just finishing up the last bit of paperwork. If in your board packet, I believe, was the letters that we received, their preliminary award letters from the state for both of those consolidations. So those are moving along. And I have a meeting, I think, next week to get an update on Dune 3. But yeah, working with the state rep on everything, getting everything uploaded to their system. And unfortunately, they've had some updates to some forms and now we have to redo them. So, well, this is new, so
Don't
we
you
have
just
to
love
redo it.
forms? You just
So,
love forms, don't you?
yeah, right.
No, I want to thank you and the engineering department and the people working on this because I know what you have to go through when you're dealing with the state and the forms you have to submit and the plans and everything else. I'm sure that with these two, well, I call them 3 projects going on, you're gonna be pretty busy. So thank you.
Yeah, it keeps us busy. That's it.
Okay, so we do have a call. So caller, are you on? Hello? Caller, are you on? There. I hear something. I see you're holding. Okay, I'm gonna move on.
Hi, this is Renee Westerlusk.
Hi,
I just have
Renee.
a question on the EVs. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It seems to me like this whole EV thing is unaffordable. So what happens to districts that are financially strapped or financially indigent? How can they be expected to upgrade to this high standard of EVs by January 1st, 2027? Is there any kind of state funding that goes out
No,
that districts can apply for? I mean, to me, this is ridiculous.
no. So yeah, call up your
Your governor.
congressman and call up call up the people that you know and say, get this thing changed. Because there is no state money available. And you're right. I mean, Judy actually said it out here in the audience. Oh my gosh, we can see all these rates just skyrocketing just because of this mandate, because this won't be a cheap endeavor, as opposed to some of the smaller districts would be hurt. So your answer is that it's a state mandate as it stands, unless they change it, modify it, or we look at some way, you know, we look at things, how we can do it the best that we're not so impacted. That's the only choices we have. Does that answer your
Are there
question?
major penalties if you don't comply or if you financially can? I mean, if you need a certain tonnage of a truck to do, you know, what is it, maintenance work or whatever, or rebuilding part of the pipeline or something, and you have to have that truck, but it's past January 1st, 2027, and you can't get the work done.
We're going to wait for
can't afford-
Caltrans to turn all their vehicles into electric, and then we'll consider it, all their heavy equipment.
I think this is an example of magical thinking at the legislature, that if we would demand it, people will immediately go out and buy these things and charge their customers for the extra expense. But you're right to worry about water districts and other districts that are at the edge of insolvency. They will go and be tipped over the edge. And for even organizations that are solvent, they will have either facing massive increases in rates, electric, gas, or water, or they're going to find themselves on the edge of insolvency. It's ill-considered law from a group of people who like to think that if they just demand things, that magically will happen.
And even those, there may be no penalties apparent right now, since this is being directed and monitored by CalCarb. Is that what you said? There's, based on the way the bureaucracy works, they probably have the mandate to start charging anything they want to, if they decide to. So it's something we have to watch for. Again, talk to the congressman, talk to our representatives, talk with anybody that you know, send letters, and we got to do something about this.
California has more people leaving it now than coming in for the first time in a very, very long time. And they've gotten the state right to the edge of bankruptcy itself. While the governor claims it's only a $30 billion debt, the bipartisan budget office says it's more like $80 billion.
And all he needs to do to solve that is one line on that negative, just make it positive.
That's right.
And it's solved.
And that's excellent magical thinking. I hope that occurs to him. But they're about ready to kill the golden goose, and some of them are starting to wake up to that, but I'm not holding out hopes they're all going to come conscious.
Renee, did you get enough out from that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. Okay,
Thank you so
for
much.
the
Thank you.
summary. Okay,
Okay.
bye.
Renee, this is Judy Decker.
Yeah,
I would like to point out it's really, really important who you vote into office. And we have a national election coming up in November. But I would also like to point out that this is a mandate, as Ty mentioned, and I don't know who besides me heard him, that is not coming from an elected official. It's coming from the Air Pollution Control District, of which we have no control, except by demanding that kind of thing change through our elected process, I believe is the only way that we can work around that one. The same thing holds true with the Utility Commission.
Yes.
They're the ones that raise the price of your electricity and your gas, and you have no control over them. They are appointed by the governor, I believe, as their pollution control district people are. So keep that in mind.
No, let's not forget the Coastal Commission, who's been preserving the coastal view of billionaires from their yachts since the 1960s.
Oh,
I think
okay,
it's-
I think we can
getting
move
a
on.
little
Yeah, we're getting
sidetracked.
sidetracked on the political
Okay.
commentary.
Thank you.
So,
Make one more comment about the California Air Resources Board that's relevant. There were something like 15 states that decided they didn't want to do air pollution stuff, so they said, we're just going to do whatever California does. So whatever the California Air Resources Board does, we're going to adopt in our states. And all of those states almost unanimously are backing out of that position as we speak. This is an interesting phenomenon going around across the country. So it's a good window into how far afield they've gone from the thinking of the entire country, that all these other states have just rescinded these laws and said they were going to do what the Air Resources Board in California did.
In the honor of Mother's Day, may I paraphrase one of my mother's favorite quotes?
okay, please do.
If California jumped off a cliff, Ron, would you jump off a cliff with it?
That's right. All right. Let's go on. Yeah, are we done with Dune 3 and hometown? Is there anything else to report there? Okay. Any report on the one on Redemacher, the quality of water there? Anything going on with that?
I have nothing personally to
Yeah.
report on that.
Okay.
I do know the GA is,
GAs, I
and
think.
they requested everything that we had and I sent it all to them.
All right, let's see, hope we see some. Thank you. All right. With that, we'll move on to financial, the current reports.
Okay, so through April, we have revenues of 12.2 million, which is about 973,000 below budget, most of that being the reduction in the GA fee because of decreased pumping. On the expenditure side, we have 13.37 million, which is 1,066,000 below budget. So our net's a negative 1,087,000, but that's 92,000 better than budgeted for this time of the year.
Okay.
Capital expenditures, 2.1 million, and then total paid to the GA, $13,809,906.
14 million, huh? All right. Yikes.
We'll hit 14 million this year, this month.
Yeah,
with the
I'd hit
GA
that,
payment.
yeah. Bye, Judy. Thank you. We don't want to know. Okay. Anything else, Ty?
Not on finance.
Okay, conservation report?
Okay, for calendar year 2024, we have 7 water waste reports received, 7 contacts made, 1 formal warning, and 1 penalty issued.
Thank you. Okay. Arsenic treatment facility.
Arsenic plant 2 has been brought online as of today. It is running at half capacity due to one of the filter vessels not being in a position to filter. We expect the media from Filtronics, which is for that plant, to arrive sometime this week. But with the nature of it running and the demand for water, we cannot take it offline. We received some disturbing news from Pure Flow and that the media from their company has been delayed 1 to 3 weeks. So we're looking at the end of May now.
Man, nothing goes easy with those plants, it seems like.
No, they're in big trouble.
Yeah. Just getting somebody to help, the maintenance requirements, the product requirements and everything. It's like, and I'm sure you've looked everywhere you can for the most reliable source, right?
Yeah, this is the 2 companies that I know of that supply this sort of media, and it just takes time to get, I guess.
Okay.
We ordered it in February, so.
We're going to blame Baltimore Harbor.
Baltimore Harbor, yeah. Yeah, it's,
Anything.
could be. All right. Operations.
Due to we've had some issues with our GIS system. So some of the data is not there. We're working on getting it re-entered. So I don't have the exact number of services replaced for the last month. But I can tell you that all of the services on Felspar from Downs to China Lake Boulevard have been replaced. So
Okay.
working again ahead of the city. I do know that 57 valves were turned for the month, bringing our grand total year to date to 152. And NODES ran 8 times, filtering 40,824 gallons, bringing our grand total of water saved to 9,303,923 gallons.
Does it note as, do you utilize it on a rotating pattern, or do you pick area, how do you pick where it goes next?
So we have a schedule of streets that need to be flushed,
Okay,
just like we used to do the regular.
just a
pull-off.
regular schedule, okay.
And then, yeah, it's dispatched monthly to those areas.
Thank you. All right, any questions or comments for the staff? George, you have anything else?
Are you talking about, comments, 11?
I'm still on, I'm finishing up the report.
Oh, you're
just to
still on,
see where we are.
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just want to be sure.
I will make one real quick comment. We're getting some new capability out of our software. One of the questions we've been running into is like, if water were ever delivered to us, what's our maximum per day? So we're actually doing some calculations. We saw, I believe Renee reported last month that our highest peak day was over 5 million gallons in one day. Is that correct? So it's new data that we hadn't necessarily had easily tabulated before, but it's certainly going to give us some good insights as we move forward to like, what our daily demand is. Wasn't necessarily all that important in the past, but it could be important in the future.
And I have a quick question too, because we talked about Edison's costs. Ty, you made a mention to me of how energy costs are skyrocketing on us. And I mean, by what percent do you expect over normal? I'm not sure what normal is because they change them all the time.
Yeah, I think we had around 400,000 budgeted for water supply, and we're hitting 800,000 this year. Just
Jeez.
for power costs.
And I talked about, I know that operations is trying to do their pumping when we're getting power generated by our
Yeah.
solar panel system. And that just seems,
Yeah, they've changed rates and time of use structures and all sorts of things to
I
squeeze.
think their
every
highest
penny.
rates are between 4 and 9, which makes no sense at all because that's when people come home, turn their air conditioners on and charge their electric cars and
That's why it's
everything else.
expensive.
And so for between 4 and 9 is, I would assume, and I hate to use that word, that operations and you guys are looking at, can we reduce that in any way by when we do? Because I imagine our biggest usage is pumping, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well, we've looked at a couple of things. I mean, I'm running everything I have at the moment.
Yeah.
Because of the current condition of the system, but we have signed an agreement with a company called Voltus, which sends out a demand response. And so we're looking at saving money there. We did one on May 1st, which hopefully saved the district a few $1,000s in reimbursements from that they get through Edison, and
Right.
they give us some of that money. Yeah, and when we get back online, we can look at time of use and when the wells are on and off and things of that nature. But I need the system to be at full capacity.
You're talking
to do
because of
that.
the Northwest Pipeline. There's certain things you have to run.
Right.
Okay, all right. That's all I have. Anybody else have questions for them
No.
before we move on? Okay, we'll go on to number 10, board comments and future agenda items. Stan, I know you're chomping the bit. What you got?
I wouldn't say chomping it necessarily, but yeah, no, I've got a couple comments. About 10 months ago, in fact, during our July workshop, our contractor, Waterview, who's looking at our water consumption, that kind of thing, indicated that we were about 25 or 30% overdrafted to meet the state conservation requirements in the out years, not this year, because I think we're doing pretty good this year according to them, but in the out years, we were still like 25 or 30% overdrafted to meet the 2025 and 2035 requirements. What I was hoping is we could get an updated report from Waterview at our next July workshop to see whether we're still in line with last year's report or whether or not we made any changes from that. And we have actually reduced pumping a little bit, so maybe we're better off than we were. So what I guess I'm requesting is that we get an update, an annual update from Waterview to see how we're doing.
Do you want that report to include
Um,
the evaporative cooler?
I'm sorry?
Do you want that report to include an evaporative cooler variance because the initial 25% did not?
Oh, right. Well, whatever, I mean, any changes to the state law that they now know. I mean, there were still a number of things up in the air
Okay.
last year in July. So obviously, if we know or have better information regarding what the state law is, we'd want to have an update based upon whatever the new requirements are. And secondly, also, with regard to the July, I'm assuming we're gonna have a July, workshop. I've been trying to track, pumping versus consumption over the last 3 years, with the difference being between the pumping and consumption, being basically our water losses. And what I've noticed is that, for the last 3 years, our losses have been going up. I mean, not much, but they're still going up. Our losses are going, or I'm sorry, the percentage of our losses are going up. And so I was hoping that the staff could put together a brief on how do we monitor our water losses, as well as what procedures do we have that would allow us to try to mitigate those water losses? Because they're not insignificant.
Stan, I'd like to comment on that. I was working on a spreadsheet today. I pulled up data from 2014 through 2024, looking at exactly that. I did consumption less production, looked at how much water loss, totaled it up, did it by percentage, looked at it by months, and I will be having a pretty comprehensive report for the board in the next couple of months about not just sort of state mandated losses, but what we're seeing. So I'm actively engaged in looking at that data right now.
I think both of the things that Stan has come up with, I think those might be good agenda items for the workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. I mean,
Yeah,
we don't have to
there's some
push-
there's
yeah.
actually some very interesting trends, but this is not the time or place to talk about them.
Right, thank you. All right,
And you've mentioned before, George, that the losses are mostly in meters that are misreading and not water just dripping out into the desert. Is that?
I will tell you that we spent several hours today talking about the various possibilities, and once again, I think it would be we could extend this meeting several hours talking about the possibilities, but we will try to summarize it, where we're trying to put all our smart thoughts together to figure it out, so we can get you some real substantial data instead of just speculation.
Well, it's only 7:45.
besides, I didn't even call on, we're at the end of this, and I didn't call your turn yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's keep this in order. Stan, do you have anything else?
No, I'm done.
Okay, yes, sir. Mallory, no, you've spoken your piece. Chuck, anything you'd like to comment on?
Yeah, I think I have like 10 things. No, I have nothing.
David, sir?
No, I
No.
have nothing to say. Thank you.
Wow.
Finally.
About finally, yeah. And for the final thing,
I think I'll
again,
leave the speechifying to that side of the board.
I know this is a busy year between all the engineering projects, between everything that's going on with the adjudication, that everybody's running around doing something all the time, the budgets, everything that's happening. Again, I appreciate it. And and no matter what obstacle I believe we come up against at this district, we'll solve it. So with that, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:48. Thank you.
You guys were long.